All right. So, Will, thank you so much for joining me today. Just before I hit record, I said my goal for today is I want to hear about the cash flow bootcamp, but more specifically, I want to talk about the emotions, the fears, the anxieties around finance. I love that you went down this road, and I want to hear a little bit about your decision to go from, practicing PT to finance guru. But really, what I want to do is I want to talk about what you've experienced as you talk to business owners in or out of the PT world, because I know there is a lot of emotional baggage that comes with finance. Finance should be just numbers. Finance should be just 1+1 = 2. But I know from my experience, the emotional baggage, the self-limiting behaviors, beliefs, all of that stuff plays way more of a role than people are willing to give credit to. So tell me, kind of give me an idea, because you and I haven't talked for, probably a year or more.
Yeah.
How did you go from being a physical therapist, licensed physical therapist, to going down this road of finance?
Yeah, it's been a journey, and I know you've seen a lot of it happen over time, Tony. But we had no plan to go this route. Had no intention of ever ending up doing some financial coaching for small business owners. But like everything, it's kind of happened organically and out of a need. And so my journey started. I think we might have even connected when I was in PT school back in it would have been 6-7 years ago. Alex and I, my business partner, we actually met we both kind of thought maybe we're going to start a practice. I'm in Pittsburgh, he's in Utah. And at the time, just separate, we thought maybe we'll have separate practices in different locations. And going through that though, and in school, kind of realized, Alex at the time had 2 little daughters I think they were both under 5 at the time. And someone like you, Tony, who's built a practice, it just consumes so much of your time and energy in life. And so for Alex, he kind of knew probably quicker than I did that really wasn't going to be the best route for him in terms of 10, 12-hour days in the beginning, building it up, marketing, all the things it takes, all the time and energy it takes to build a practice. And so he had actually started looking into creating a digital course for runners. And so that's what got him into the world of the online business side of things. And I'd been hosting a podcast. And so I got kind of connected in that world. And I really thought about, again, for my own mental health, like I've kind of struggled with anxiety, depression, agoraphobia since, really I was in my early 20s. And the thought of like being in the same place over and over and over again, this almost felt trapped to me, just based for my own mental health. And I'm sure there are other people out there who kind of feel that way. And so I had started learning about digital marketing through the podcast. And long story short is Alex and I both kind of realized there was this overlap. He was doing online courses. I was kind of learning about digital marketing and social media. And we'd created a Facebook group, kind of like you'd started your Facebook groups, just purely to teach and share what we were learning. And it just organically brought in other PT owners and OT owners. And we just sharing what we knew, we had people reach out and say, hey, I don't really like social media. I don't like this stuff. I know I need to do it. Everyone tells me I should do it. They said, could we pay you and to help us? And so that was the initial sort of start of what became an agency. And how we get into finances is we run that agency for a couple of years as agency/coaching kind of business, teaching people how to run social marketing campaigns for their businesses. And kind of 2 things happened. So over the course of the first couple of years, like most small business owners, we didn't know anything about business finances. So Alex loves personal finance, and you would think, well, shouldn't that translate to business finance? But it's just a whole nother game of understanding cash flow management. Where does money go? And I remember we had a really, in-depth talk about a year and a half into our business, and we had owed more in taxes than we had saved for. Classic early business entrepreneur moment. And it wasn't anything bad or, like we weren't hundreds of thousands of dollars unprepared. It was like maybe $10,000. But at the time it was like, okay, we got to go hustle. We got to go make more sales. And then we can't even spend any of that. We can't keep any of that because that's got to go back to paying what we already owe. And I realized, we were both like, man, we can't do this. And I asked Alex, I said, can we just outsource this stuff? Like I'm terrible at this. Like, can we outsource it? And so we tried. We hired a bookkeeper. We hired an accountant. We still work with them today. They're amazing. But we quickly realized our bookkeeper and our accountant, our bookkeeper categorizes all of our transactions, and our accountant then, more often than not, just takes that and files our taxes at the end of the year. But beyond that, there's this whole lack of, well, how do I interpret all these numbers that are coming in? You're giving me my P&L. I don't know what any of this means. Do you have time to teach me? Hey, sorry, we've got 100 clients. I don't have time to sit down and teach you what all this stuff means. And we were just kind of like, well, I guess that's how it is. And so for another, 6 months, we just kind of assumed that was the norm. And then we had a business coach who said, hey, some of the numbers you're telling me don't add up. Pull up your books. And, I'm over here like how to log back into QuickBooks, doing what the normal thing is, and the feelings of shame and guilt of like, I know I should be better with this, but okay. And I got exposed, right? Someone's like, hey, pull it up. And I did. And he's like, hey, why are they categorizing things this way? And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? He's like, well, this doesn't seem like it should be categorized in this way. And that was my introduction into like, I had just given total power over these things to someone else who's an expert, which is great. Of course, I don't want to be a bookkeeper, but it made me realize like, oh, I have to have enough knowledge to know red flags or, right, hey, this is actually being done right. And we ended up having some miscategorizations that ended up costing us, multiple thousands of dollars in things that should have been taxed differently that weren't. And, when you're running a lean small business, like every $5,000-$10,000 matters, especially when that could be potential take-home pay. And I was like, wow, okay, we gotta really figure this out. And that led Alex, I promise I'll speed up here. That led Alex to going, hey, I got to do something about it. Alex had 2 little kids, with, and Tony, I know you're married and have kiddos. I'm unmarried and don't have kids yet. And so my pressure was a little bit lower, but Alex's pressure was like, hey, like if we don't figure this out, I got to go get a PT job because I got people at home who are counting on me to make sure this works. And so Alex started creating spreadsheets, just internal spreadsheets for what we needed. He would take all of our data from QuickBooks. At the time we were using a software called Xero, but he would create spreadsheets about, hey, where are we at cash flow wise? How much can we be paying ourselves? And he just started creating these simple Google Sheet tools that helped us. And then the second piece that happened is we were running the agency, and we had a couple of clients who I knew that we were providing a really good return on the marketing budget they were giving us. So like 6-8 times back of what they were giving us. And they said, hey, I think we're going to have to part ways. And I just remember thinking, I was like, hey, I really appreciate that. I totally understand. Do you mind if I ask? It just seems like this is going really well. Why would we want to stop this? And both of them, two separate companies, essentially the answer was, we just don't have the cash flow. We don't have the money. And I just remember thinking, but how? Like, if we're bringing you, $6, $8, sometimes $10 back for every dollar you're giving us, like, where's it going? And their answer was, we don't know. And that was the issue. And so what ended up happening is we said, hey, well, could we at least show you the tools we're using in an attempt to kind of keep them as clients, say, hey, let's see if we could save the situation. Can we show you the tools and stuff we've been using to manage our finances to figure this out? And, we pulled up the tools and they're like, I need that. I want that. And we're like, well, cool. It's really cool. But if you don't understand it, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, hey, I can give you a book of physical therapy, of anatomy and physical therapy treatment. But if you don't understand the knowledge behind it, it's not really useful. And that slowly just led to organically them referring a few people who were saying, hey, like, these guys really helped me out with understanding my books, understanding where my money's going. And essentially said, this is the thing I've always wished my bookkeeper and accountant would do for me. And they have it. And it was kind of in that moment where we're like, okay, we kept hearing that same thing. We had lived that. We saw other people live it. And we were having it being told directly to us. And so about 2.5 years ago, we decided to make the pivot and go really fully into the financial coaching side. And yeah, so the last 2.5 years, we've had over 140 clients at this point who've gone through all different industries, from physical therapy, occupational therapy practice owners, obviously, to party rental companies, to manufacturing companies, to we have a couple that runs a mystery game night company where they actually create custom murder mystery games for folks. So sorry, Tony, that was a long-winded answer, but that's how we got to PT, to kind of doing what we're doing now. And if you told me even 4 years ago that this is something we'd be doing, I probably would have laughed in your face and said, that's silly. There's no way we'd be doing that. So here's where we are.
You hit so many topics. First, we just did a murder mystery dinner at a dueling piano bar. A buddy of mine did a silent auction, won this event. It was so much fun. It was like 2 weeks ago, just over the border into Northern Kentucky. Great night. Great night. You kind of have followed the journey of so many, like I got into physical therapy. First, I love business. I've always been a business entrepreneur, but even getting into physical therapy, it's like, well, I love to help people and I'm going to become a physical therapist because I love the profession. And what I eventually realized was there's more ways to help people, right? And so then as I wanted to help people in different ways, I got more into social media and YouTube and starting the Facebook group. And the same for you. It's like you're helping people in the form of helping those business owners help their customers by staying in business. I think another interesting thing that you said, and literally yesterday, my wife said this same exact thing to me. It's April 11th right now. We finalized our taxes. We're always that group. We get our taxes. We get the extension. We go through August. Like we're on the last minute of the last day of the last second to get our taxes filed. We do have a CPA. And we're like, why isn't the accountant giving us strategy, giving us advice, giving us information? Because in our mind, you, me, probably anybody watching this today, as a therapist, we were the therapists, we still are, who see the big picture, who's like, all right, I know what this patient wants to achieve. I'm going to help them achieve that goal in any way possible. That could include therapeutic exercise, manual therapy, but it could also include nutrition and mindfulness and sleep hygiene and all of these other things. Well, most people aren't that way. Most CPAs are CPAs. They take the number you give them and they plug it into the machine and they export. That's it. Most bookkeepers just put the numbers in the book and that's it. And so it's so hard for us as, therapists who see the big picture to think, why don't they do the same thing? I took my kid in for a haircut yesterday. The stylist was like, well, what do you want me to do? I was like, I don't know. Just make it look good. Do what you do. You're the stylist. Make it look good. I don't care what you do. So with all of that, I know everybody goes through these same frustrations. And one of the things that I think is so interesting to me, and I'm going to just relate everything back to physical therapy. Yep. When a patient comes in, I had a patient, she had a bunionectomy and she had some hardware put into her foot. This was yesterday. I'm working with a developer who wants to do AI documentation. And so I'm getting permission and consent from my patients, but I'm recording the audio from these sessions. And as I'm going through my evaluation, just repeatedly, my patient was telling me, I'm so fearful, I'm so scared. My doctor said, don't do this, don't do that. And there's so much fear. And so she loved swimming and she used to swim. And I was like, well, why are you not swimming? She's like, well, it hurts. And so as I'm palpating, she's jumping, she's reacting. Yeah. And so I said, well, did your podiatrist touch you here? And she was like, yeah. I said, so what did he tell you? And she was like, nothing. He touched it. I jumped and he made me get an x-ray and the x-ray is normal. And so I went through the process with her. I said, well, let's talk about this. Let's spend some time. Look, what are the potential tissues that are generating the information that your brain is perceiving as a threat? I said, there's skin, there's blood vessels, there's nerve endings, there's scar tissue, connective tissue, there's bone, there's cartilage. We went through this whole thing and I probably spent 5 to 10 minutes like explaining when I touch you and you react, I'm eliminating the things that I know it's not. And I'm looking at the things that I think it could be. We do the pain science discussion. We explain the experience of pain and the sensation and all of this. There are no financial people that take the time to do that, and the same way my patient was so fearful of the pain she was experiencing that she was avoiding everything. I think business owners like me are so fearful of the pain of looking at their finances, realizing just how little net profit there is, and then having somebody else, you, seeing that, seeing the warts, seeing, behind the curtain, seeing the dirty corners and stuff, like that's really hard. So what have been some of your experiences working through this with people, the emotional side, the anxiety of it all? What are some of the things that you're seeing that maybe people didn't even realize they were doing or feeling or experiencing?
Yeah, it's one of those where it's a great question. And I think to your point of the patient that you had with the bunionectomy, where the fear, in this case, what we've seen is that the fear, they know it's there. It's just one that they don't want to verbalize and vocalize. And so when we, one of the things I think that we really try to do is, I'll get to answer your question, kind of what we've seen. But I think the way that we're able to get there is because of our therapy backgrounds. I think, Tony, much like you, Alex and I, we are, we're therapists by trade. And so we, we're able to communicate at a level with empathy and understanding and helping people feel like they're not being judged. And then the other part of that is because of that, we're able to get people to actually share kind of what's really going on and let them know we're in a judgment-free zone. So once we kind of get them there and they realize, hey, there's no judgment here. We're not going to be, essentially assessing this and saying it's good or bad, but hey, let's just face reality and come up with a plan. I think some of the things that we've seen are, number one is just pure lack of organization. And so people avoid organizing things. They avoid wanting to even keep things organized. Tony, are you there, by the way?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm just listening.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't see. I thought maybe, sorry,
No,
apologize.
I'm figuring out how StreamYard works, so I'm trying to go back and forth.
No worries. I just was like, I hope I didn't lose Tony.
No.
So with that, we've realized that one of the biggest things is that there's a lack of organization that people go through. And so because people don't get trained on what should you even have, a lot of people just get QuickBooks and then they have no clue how to sync that to their bank accounts and be able to, organize what's going on. And, like anything, if you can't measure it, it just becomes chaos. And then at some point it becomes so chaotic that there's this fear of even addressing it. And so we have to tell them like, it's okay. And it's going to be painful. It's a lot like physical therapy. Obviously that's the world that Alex and I come from, but essentially saying to them, kind of giving them a roadmap. And so rather than promising, hey, here's what we see the most often. Hey, could you guys just do this for me? And we have to have the painful conversation that is, no, I can't. If it were that easy, it would be a lot more expensive, and we would be, there'd be no need for someone to educate you on this. And ultimately, would you want someone to be totally in control of your finances and not you? And they go, no, I want to be in control of it. Yeah, it's like, hey, if you're going to hand it off to someone and give them total control, then you lose, your ability to have freedom over that. So it's like, hey, you need to be in control of this. And so we have to go through the education process, which is just like physical therapy, which is, look, we have tools that can make the symptoms go down, right? So for you, it might be like, for in physical therapy world, it's, hey, we have certain modalities or movement techniques or whatever that we can do to reduce symptoms. But just reducing the symptoms doesn't eliminate the problem, right? We have to get to the root cause. And to do that is a little bit of a painful process of assessment. Like we got to go in and figure out what's going on. Is this an organization problem completely? Like you might have the discipline and the habits. We've seen this before where someone actually looks at their bank accounts every day. They're looking at their P&L. But if it's unorganized and inaccurate, then you're really not going to go anywhere, no matter how disciplined or, it's like if we go and you do one rep of, I don't know, a bicep curl every day, but like no weights. It's like, hey, why don't I have a bulging bicep? It's like, well, yes, you're going and doing something, but you're not hitting the minimum effective dose to see growth. You're not doing the principles of progressive overload, right? It's one of those things where you're like, yes, the habit's there, but the actual practice of what you're doing is just not accurate in the sense of to get you to where you want to go. And so we always have to tell them kind of like a roadmap for a physical therapy patient, which is, hey, for most of our clients, the first month is a little bit painful, right? We have to open up the scar. We have to look in. The best thing that we really tell them is we're therapists, like from our heart, and the profit coaches that we've been able to hire all come from a human empathy background. And this is not a place of, hey, you've done something good, you've done something bad. This is, look, if you want to move forward in this, you put all this effort into this, like we have to face reality, and reality a lot of times is uncomfortable. Are you okay that we go and face that? And usually with our messaging, that's who comes in is like, hey, I'm at a point where I have to get this figured out. We've had plenty of cases where people, I'm just thinking of somebody who's doing, like over $5 million a year in revenue, and their owner take-home pay hadn't changed in years. And it's like, and not asking to be greedy of like, hey, want more money, but like, if you're taking on all the risk of bringing on that many more people, you're obviously investing more and more into whether that's marketing, team development, equipment in a lot of cases. At what point is it like, hey, you should be able to reward yourself for taking all that risk and liability? And, the reality is like, I just don't know where there's no more money, there's no more cash to pull from. And it's like, look, hey, if that's the case, so I kind of feel like I've diverted from your question a little bit, Tony, but some of the things that we see are so poor organization is number one, meaning there's just no structure of how they're looking at finances. It's sort of like somebody who just goes to the gym and wings it every time, right? Which is fine. It's like, hey, it's better than nothing.
Right.
You're getting in shape. But like, if you have a fitness goal and all you do is just show up and you do random exercises at random reps and random set schemes, it's like, you might end up getting better, but or hitting your goal, but it's probably not as likely as if you actually had a structured process. And so that's number one. And then number two is what we just find is there's a lack of education around it. Just like you and I, before you go to PT school, yeah, you probably know some anatomy bones, some bones and muscle names, but like you don't understand how it all works. You don't understand the education behind why things work. Even something simple, like not simple, but simple now that you understand it, is pain science, right? When someone's like, oh, it hurts, and old school thinking was just like, oh, let's go to the side of the pain. Okay, it must be tissue damage here. And it's like, well, hey, it's been going on for like, a year. It's probably not, maybe, it could be tissue damage, but there's probably something, going on here a little bit more. And so those are really the two biggest things, is organization and education. And then from there, what we do is we help them see, hey, look, it's about the discipline now of honing in on tracking this correctly and looking at it correctly, so you can make better decisions. I mean, ultimately, we have people who are hiring way too soon or hiring way too late. So we do a lot of like capacity demand mapping for folks. And so we just see a lot of it across the board of poor organization leads to poor organization, and lack of education leads to just poor financial decision making is what it comes down to. So I don't know if that answers the question specifically, but that's kind of what we focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't get over how many parallels there are between what we do in the clinic and what you guys are doing with finance. Even from the fact that, you'll get patients that come in that are just like, I want to lay on that table and I want you to fix me. Well, that's not what we do here, and so there's done for you, there's do it yourself, there's done with you. As we kind of come to the end of this segment, what I would love to hear is, now I've been binging all of your reels and all of your social media content. You had publicly said, the boot camp had started last Friday. Mm-hmm. Today is Thursday, the 11th. You're doing, I think, weekly sessions. It's a 4-week program. Yep. And you had said it's a $2,500 investment. Mm-hmm. I want to hear a little more about exactly what somebody gets or does through this, because I think the better we understand what it is, just like you said, my therapist can't do the reps for me. I have to do the work. I have to experience the effort and the burning and the pain and the soreness, but I'm going to come out on the other end healthier and stronger because I did it. So what are you guys, what would somebody actually expect from participating in the program?
Yeah, so great question, and appreciate you letting me talk about it. I think really the way that we work with any individual in this case is, when we work together, we provide them with a custom financial dashboard. And so it's a series of Google Sheets that we've created that cover about 12 of the most core financial topics that you need. And so one of the biggest struggles that we find with folks is everything just feels all over the place. I have this I have my QuickBooks that comes in, I get my P&L from my bookkeeper, and I'm supposed to just look at it, and I do look at it, but I don't understand how that ties into what am I supposed to be putting away for taxes, and how much should I be setting aside for team pay and payroll. And what we do is we teach you how to take all the data and put it into one place that makes it easy to see. And so one, that dashboard's really cool. I show it to people and they're like, this is amazing, this is what I want. And I always give them the analogy, kind of like in physical therapy. It's like, look, I could give you, the dashboard, but it's like an airplane. Like, it's really cool. It looks really great. But if you don't have a pilot's license, it's kind of just a giant couch that's going to sit somewhere. And yeah, it's probably the coolest couch you'll ever have, but that's not really why you got an airplane, is to just lounge on it. You want to go places, and you want to be able to take yourself or whoever to where you want to go. And you can't do that without the license. And the license is the education of learning how to fly it and manage it. And so over the boot camp, for example, during the 4 weeks, we go through all of this together. You're led by Alex, who's my business partner. He created all of our financial systems, and educating you how to do it. So we're doing it with you, educating you on how to understand it and then maintain it. And so for the boot camp, it's a group program. Like you said, it's $2,500. The biggest thing for this is so many people are operating without a system, and they've been operating without a system for years, and they just don't realize how much that costs them in terms of not having clarity, sleepless nights, and ultimately financially. But on the bigger hand, on a broader scale here, and we close that on Friday, just because we're taking a small cohort through, and we want to keep it to a small cohort. But we have evergreen, we have evergreen coaching, which is we actually sit with you one-on-one. So a big part of what we do is you're paired with a profit coach. This is not in the boot camp. The boot camp's a group-oriented program, but typically what we do is we pair you with a profit coach. We've been really lucky to find these former successful business owners who have exited their businesses. They're in a different season of life. Someone like you, Tony, who, essentially would, probably make a great profit coach in some ways, where, they've successfully grown and exited a profitable business, and but they don't want to go market and create their own business coaching program. And so we've been able to find them. They take people through our process, and they meet with you weekly, every week for an hour, whether that's over an 8-week, 16-week period. And we've just found it super helpful that you have a guide who's going to walk you through this, to force you to have the financial meeting with yourself that most owners just aren't having, and in a structured way that walks you through a system that you can repeat. We've been using the system for the last 4.5 years in our own business. And so we can say for certain, like, it works. It is what's allowed us to stay profitable and make good financial decisions. So that's about the boot camp. And then, I know for some people it's like, hey, I'm not ready right now, but if you ever need help, we're here for that, and feel free to reach out.
And last question for the boot camp specifically, but then also I'd like to know more generally,
Yeah.
who is like the ideal candidate? Like, what size business? Or you mentioned a $5 million business earlier. Are we talking about multiple millions in revenue? Are we talking about startups? Where are we in that process?
Yeah, so the boot camp was really aimed for more of the startup business owners. So if you're doing, probably I would say minimum 80K a year, probably closer to 100K a year. And the reason we say that is we had a mentor, a financial mentor of ours at one point say, you don't have a money problem until you make enough money.
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed, and I was like, well, that seems like, shouldn't you be worried about finances from the beginning? And over time, it's made more sense to me. That's like, hey, until you're hitting like, 100K a year, 10K a month, essentially, like, you probably need to just be focusing more on marketing and sales and delivering a great product. And then, because up to that point, you're not going to owe a whole lot in taxes. I mean, unless your margins are 99%, you're probably not going to end up owing a ton in taxes. Yes, it's good to build a foundation, but ultimately it's like, hey, your resources should probably go to marketing and selling and delivering your product and service better. So if that's you and you're like, I want to do it, obviously we can help. But the ideal fit for the boot camp would be probably in the 100K a year range to, we have people who are doing $1 million a year in there who that just are really, really running on thin profit margins. And so to work one-on-one just doesn't make sense yet. And this is a great place for them to start.
Awesome. And what's the best way? I know we're on a tight timeline for this boot camp.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this video today. What is the best way for people to reach out if they want to be considered for this?
Yeah, all you have to do is reach out to me on Facebook, Will Boyd. You can shoot me a message, or Instagram, Dr. Will Boyd. Feel free to shoot me a message. If you don't like social media, which I'm guessing you probably do if you're watching this, but if you don't, you can email me, will@ceofinanceacademy.com, and happy to answer any questions. I know it's a big decision for a lot of folks. And so if you have questions, happy to answer them and see if we'd be a fit.
Awesome. And full disclosure for anybody watching, I'm not an affiliate for this program. Will didn't reach out to me asking me to talk about it. In fact, I don't even know that you knew that I wanted to talk about this, but
I appreciate that.
absolutely, because it's one of those things where I was fortunate enough down in Florida, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago now, I met Alex Anger in person. I watched his presentation. We talked, and I know the stuff that you guys are doing is great stuff, and so my objective here is solely to get the information out to the public, the community. Will, I'm going to end the recording in just a minute. Hang out for me, but I wanted to say publicly, thank you so much for taking the time and kind of talking to us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. Really appreciate it.